What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So last night I was able to check out Lord of the Rings, The War for the Rohirrim. I'm probably going to say this like 50 different ways during this review, so just bear with me and let me know how wrong I am in the comments. But anyways, I had a chance to go and check that movie out last night. And quick point of reference, I mean, the original trilogy of Lord of the Rings is probably my favorite film of all time. Maybe, if anything, second only to The Dark Knight. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. Three pretty much perfect films across the board. The Hobbit movies I also really love. Like, they may not be as well crafted and masterful as Lord of the Rings, but they're still really great, and they get dumped on a lot for really some reason. Like, I never understood why these films get so much hate. So walking into Lord of the Rings, I'd seen the mixed to almost negative reviews from a lot of people. Some people did really enjoy it, to be fair, which definitely kept my optimism up, but a lot of other people were just saying it was underwhelming, it wasn't good enough, that it didn't live up to the hype. And having seen the film myself, I felt this was a very, very worthy return to Middle-earth. And another quick point of reference before I go any further, this is the first Lord of the Rings film that I actually saw in the theaters. Like, I think I started watching these movies like right after Hobbit Battle of the Five Armies left the theater. So this is my first experience going in and sitting down and really experiencing a Middle-earth story unfold on the big screen. And I gotta say, just right after the opening like logos, it starts swelling with this like panoramic, of course it's an anime, but it's still very gorgeous shot of like the mountains. Feels very nostalgic to a traditional Lord of the Rings film. And then you get the music, the theme of like the, I guess, main overture or whatever of the Lord of the Rings original trilogy starts playing, and just the speakers blaring that. It was just so epic, so awesome, and I just really felt transported back to Middle-earth. So yeah, I really love the idea of this unsung hero by the name of Hera, the girl that was pretty prominently featured in the trailer. I love this idea of kind of her being this almost hidden figure almost of the Middle-earth lore, to where not a lot of people know of her, not a lot of people give her the credit that she deserves, but yet she is somebody who really impacted what we know of Helm's Deep, Hammerhand, all of this. And they do it in a way to where I don't think, and again, I have very limited knowledge on a lot of the lore outside the films and the books, but I do think a lot of people are going to be upset. She doesn't really come off, well, she's not really stealing the spotlight or show from anybody else. I'll put it that way. I'm going to get into a little bit more of what I didn't like about her character later on in the negatives, but for the most part, I really thought she complemented the story well. She's very much the eyes and ears of this world that we're seeing and witnessing before our eyes unfold, the story that's being told. Helm Hammerhand, he still gets a lot of moments in the spotlight, don't get me wrong. Like, he's absolutely there. The people worried that it was really just going to be Hera's show and Helm Hammerhand was really going to take a back seat. Not the case at all. He has a very prominent role to play, and arguably the most kick-butt moment in the entire film comes from him. And honestly, this was probably my favorite scene in the entire movie. I thought it was fantastic. I'm not going to get into the details here. I'm just going to let y'all experience it for yourself, but you're going to know it when you see it. It was fantastic. But yeah, moving on. I just thought, talking about, I guess, Helm Hammerhand, this dude, he's just a beast, and yeah, he's really, you really see why he's considered one of the most important Lord of the Rings characters, like outside of, you know, the Frodos, the Gandalfs, all that. Like, he's one that's very prominent, I guess, in the lore, and kind of talked about as this legendary figure, and yeah, you see that in this movie, because this man alone gave me free gym motivation for 3 years straight. Like, this bro was jacked, bro was powerful, bro did not take crap from anybody. Such a really great character. And yeah, the animation itself is really gorgeous. The scenery, the atmosphere, everything just fits well into what we've seen of Middle-earth. The anime side I was a little concerned about, because I was like, you know what, I'm used to live action. Like, I have nothing against animation. I mean, Across the Spider-Verse was probably my favorite film of last year. So it's not that I have anything against animation so much as I do. It's just naturally, things feel more realistic when they're live action. So when I come off The Hobbit, or when I come off The Lord of the Rings, and this is my first animated introduction to Middle-earth, because I've never seen like the really old like Hobbit, Lord of the Rings animated movies back in the 70s or whatever. And it was, it was a little off-putting at first, but really I just settled in and I just enjoyed it for what it was. Again, really great animation. The action in this movie, trust me, it's way more hard-hitting than even the live-action movies at times. It gets pretty brutal, it gets very hard-hitting, definitely a lot of blood in certain parts, and kills you would not normally see in a PG-13 movie, but again, because it's animated, they're kind of able to tiptoe over that line a little bit more because it's not live action and doesn't look as realistic. There's also quite a few nods to the original trilogy. There's also some Easter eggs, fan service, definitely a few cameos and voice actors that I'm not going to spoil here from that starred those characters in the live action films that make an appearance here. However, one thing I'm going to point out is that it doesn't do what a lot of these prequels or even just legacy sequels in general tend to do, where it's kind of just repeating certain plot beats of those characters, or it's just throwing them in there to be like, look who we got to star in this movie. Just about all of them. There's like one that's kind of more or less maybe questionable, Easter egg that I was kind of like, I don't know if that really fits. But everything else really just served the story well. Like, it felt natural to have such and such character appear during this scene, or reference this or that during this moment. It just all really fit together, I thought, and really meshed together very well. The story itself, guys, don't get me wrong, it's not thematically rich. It's not as deep or philosophical as The Lord of the Rings, or at times even The Hobbit could be. This is through and through a war movie. This is kind of, I went with a buddy of mine yesterday, and I pretty much told him, I said, to me, this felt much more in line with The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies, with a little bit of Return of the King thrown in for good measure. Because obviously, if you've seen both of those films, they're essentially a big battle scene. Like, there's more stuff to it, obviously, and extra layers and context, but for the most part, especially with The Battle of the Five Armies, it's really just one big battle, and these warring factions all coming together. And that's what you get with this film. You get these two kingdoms that are at odds with each other, and they're kind of going at it. The villain of the film, who is really unlikable, I'm not saying he's like one of the best villains of the year that I've seen in film, but he does a really good job of really just giving you that villain that you want to see justice brought to. Like, you want to see Helmhammerhand, Hera, this whole army of Rohan just absolutely demolish him and his army because he's such a terrible person, and they do a really good job of portraying that. But all that to say is that, he's very evil, he's not a complex gray area with this guy, and I really enjoyed it because, again, it just gave you this man going up against this kingdom that he feels has wronged him. We know the army of or the kingdom of Rohan has been absolutely ruined and decimated by the actions of the villain in this film, and so it really gives you the motivations. Again, it may not be thematically rich, but it does a really good job of what it's setting out to do, and really give us setup for a really awesome, ultimately, battle that we get at soon to be Helm's Deep, if you've seen the Two Towers. So yeah, it's a overall it's a simplistic story, I guess you could say, but it's one that actually works. It doesn't go off on a lot of tangents like Peter Jackson. I mean, if there's really any overarching kind of problem maybe with the Peter Jackson live action films, but a lot of it's also in the book, to be fair. But nonetheless, there's no side quests, there's no random situations that they're going to find themselves in. This is a very forward focused film, and I kind of like that. It's simplicity, but also one that I think works in the film's favor. And this is all what is, without mentioning, what I think is going to go down as one of the year's best soundtracks. It does a really great job of blending both, again, the Lord of the Rings music that we know and love, but also kind of throwing in its own little music cues. The overture, I thought, was just really beautiful. It combined, again, both old and new perfectly. Really just a great film overall. And yeah, I guess going on to really the only thing I didn't like about this film, and again, this is like literally the only thing I didn't like about this film, is that I feel like we needed more kind of backstory to who Hera was. I do feel like she can occasionally, and again, occasionally, not very frequently, but she can become a bit of a Mary Sue at times, to where you're watching her and you're kind of like, we don't really know her backstory, so we don't really know how she became this powerful. and how she became so good at riding, sword fighting, all that. Like, we can kind of fill in the blanks, but I feel like because they make her so OP at times, it would have really helped out a lot if we could have seen more backstory to her character to fully flesh her out. That said, guys, overall, this is very likely to go down as one of 2024's most underrated films. It really is a shame that the rough critical reception and lack of marketing, I think, is going to keep both old and potentially new Middle-earth fans from going to this film, as well as anime fans. I think it's a really great anime as well. And yeah, if you go and see this film, definitely go see it on the big screen. I think it's definitely worth the price of admission. So overall, guys, I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. I really love this film. I'm not saying that it's as good as the Lord of the Rings films. I'm not even saying it's quite on the level of maybe The Desolation of Smaug or something. But I do think a lot of people are going to sleep on this film, and I wouldn't be surprised if 5 years down the road this ends up becoming a really underrated cult classic in the Middle-earth fandom. So anyways, guys, that's all I got for today. Let me know in the comments down below what you all thought, and as always, if you like this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will catch you all later. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. If you liked what you've seen here and you want to see more, please feel free to like, subscribe, share, and check out my other videos in the link in the description down below, and I will see you all later.